There's a house, a normal street, neighbors waving good morning. And inside that house, a secret that lasted for decades. I'm not going to tell you how many years. Not yet. First, I need you to understand something crucial about this story. What disturbs people most isn't what happened. It's that nobody, absolutely nobody, suspected a thing. If you're the kind of person who can't stop a video halfway through, hit like right now, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which case you want me to cover next. Trust me, you're going to need someone to process this with. This is the story of Josef Fritzl, Austria, the late 20th century, a time when trusting your neighbor was still considered normal, not naive. Josef Fritzl was the kind of man who fit perfectly into the landscape of any small city. He had a job. He had a family. He had a house with a garden. If you'd seen him at the grocery store, you would have looked past him in 2 seconds. The kind of man who simply exists, who takes up space without anyone wondering why. And that, as you're going to understand in the next few minutes, was exactly what he needed. Because while Josef Fritzl was building his image as an ordinary man, he was also building something else. Literally, with his own hands. An underground structure beneath his own home, in the city of Amstetten, that grew over time into a labyrinth of rooms with steel doors, controlled ventilation, and a security system he designed himself. For what purpose? We'll get there. But first I want you to hold on to this image. A man building a parallel world beneath the visible world. 2 realities inside the same building. And the neighbors, upstairs, drinking their morning coffee. Now, there's something I think is absolutely essential to understand before we go further. Something most coverage of this case completely ignores. Josef Fritzl was not a monster who appeared from nowhere. He was the product of a series of patterns. Psychological, social, familial. Patterns that science has spent decades trying to understand. And I'm not telling you this to justify anything, because there is no justification possible. I'm telling you this because understanding how someone like this is formed is the only way we have any hope of preventing it from happening again. What do we know about his childhood? Very little, and what we know is dark. He grew up under the shadow of an intensely controlling mother. A relationship that psychologists who analyzed the case described as profoundly dysfunctional. A home where control was the only form of love that existed. I'm not drawing you an excuse. I'm drawing you a map. Control was what he learned. Control was what he practiced. And control was what he escalated, over decades, until it reached something that the entire world, when it finally came to light in 2008, took days to emotionally process. Let's go back to the house. In 1984, Josef Fritzl convinced his daughter Elizabeth, who was 18 years old at the time, to help him install a door in the basement. She went downstairs. He drugged her. And when Elizabeth Fritzl regained consciousness, the world she knew had vanished. The door weighed hundreds of kilograms. It was sealed with concrete. It had an electronic locking system that only he knew how to operate. And for the next 24 years, no one else opened it. 24 years. Think about that for a moment. 24 years is enough time for a child to be born, grow up, finish university, and start their own life. It's the amount of time Elizabeth Fritzl spent in that basement. Without seeing the sun, without knowing the seasons, without being able to leave, under artificial light, with a temperature controlled by him, in a space that totaled no more than 60 square meters. And yet, upstairs, life went on. Josef Fritzl went up for breakfast, went to work, chatted with the neighbors. At some point he even took in 3 of Elizabeth's children, telling everyone, the authorities, social services, that his daughter had abandoned them and that he, generously, was stepping up to raise them. The authorities believed him. They visited the house. They reviewed the case. And found nothing. Here's what I want you to ask yourself. How is that possible? And the answer is uncomfortable because it isn't simple. It's not just that Josef Fritzl was intelligent, though he was. It's not just that the basement was well constructed, though it was. It's that society, in general, is not designed to suspect what it cannot see. We trust appearances. We trust what a person projects. And someone who projects normalcy has, within that system of collective trust, a brutal advantage. The neighbors said he was reserved. Some said he was polite. Not one of them, not a single person, suspected what was happening just meters away. Now there's another dimension of this story I need you to sit with. Inside the basement, Elizabeth Fritzl had 7 children. 7. 3 of them were brought up to the world above by Fritzl, who presented them as abandoned grandchildren. 3 remained in the basement for their entire childhoods, never having seen the outside world. And one of the infants died shortly after birth. Those 3 children who grew up underground had never seen the sky, never felt wind, never walked on grass. When they were finally rescued, doctors described the process of adapting to light, to open space, to the sounds of the outside world as extraordinarily difficult. Their bodies and minds had been built for a world without windows. Think about what that means. The case broke open in 2008, when one of the daughters living upstairs, Kirsten, became critically ill and had to be hospitalized. Elizabeth, desperate, convinced Fritzl that she needed to come out and speak with the doctors. It was the first time in 24 years she had left the basement. And everything collapsed. Because Elizabeth talked. And what she said set in motion an investigation that, within hours, shattered the image an entire country had of itself. Austria entered a collective identity crisis. How could this happen here? How do we not see it? What else are we not seeing? Josef Fritzl was arrested that same year. At trial, he was found guilty of murder by negligence, incest, rape, false imprisonment, and enslavement. The sentence was life in prison, with the possibility of transfer to a psychiatric facility. Today, he remains incarcerated. But here's the part that truly doesn't let you sleep. It's not the crime. It's the silence. 24 years of silence. 24 years during which a woman lived in a basement and the world kept turning. During which children were born and grew up without seeing the sun. During which the house next door was completely normal. This is not a story about a monster in a dark cave. It's a story about the distance that can exist between appearance and reality. About how easily something can happen at the edges of what's visible, especially when someone is actively working to keep it invisible. Forensic psychologists who studied the case speak of a specific profile, what they call the double life predator. Not someone who looks suspicious. Quite the opposite. Someone whose social function, whose public image, acts as a shield. Normalcy, in these cases, is not innocence. It's camouflage. And that is what makes this story so emotionally impossible to close. Because there's no obvious signal that tells you something was wrong. There's no moment where you can say, there was the warning sign. What there is a chain of small decisions to trust. To not ask questions. To assume that what you see is what's there. Elizabeth Fritzl, through all of it, survived. Her children survived. And there's something in that survival, in that absolutely incomprehensible human resilience, that deserves to be named. Because for 24 years, in 60 square meters, without natural light, she found a way to keep being a mother. To protect her children as much as she could. To preserve something human in a space designed to strip humanity away. The story of Josef Fritzl is one of the most disturbing of the 21st century, not because it is the most violent, but because it is the most silent. And silence, as you now know, can last for decades. If you made it this far, you're already part of this community. Subscribe, like the video, and tell me in the comments which story you want next. Because some stories don't just shake you. They change the way you see the world.